Hello and welcome to the Alcohol Recovery Show, where we discuss practical, actionable steps for anyone who wants to achieve their dream of getting and staying well, happy and free from any form of alcohol dependence. Hello and a warm welcome to the Alcohol Recovery Show. Today I'm going to talk about a feeling that alcohol tried to steal. As I record this, it's late May and I'm sitting by the coast in the Welsh countryside. The tide's moving slowly and there are little dapples of sunlight on the grass. Clouds drift lazily across an impossibly blue sky. So I was out walking this morning, looking around at the beautiful environment that I'm in, and it brought to mind something that I honestly believe can help us stop drinking and stay stopped. And it's not discipline. It's not productivity hacks. It's not white-knuckling our way through cravings. It's this. It's awe. That feeling of suddenly becoming very quiet inside because something beautiful, mysterious, or alive has touched you. It could be a shaft of sunlight through the trees, or the sea glittering, especially if it's unexpected. Birdsong in the early morning, or something as simple as the smell of rain in the summer on a warm pavement. Perhaps it's the face of your dog, or a child laughing, or a piece of music that somehow really speaks to your soul, or a sky that just seems so enormous, so endless, it makes your problems feel smaller for a moment. That's awe. And I think one of the tragedies of alcohol misuse is not only that it numbs pain, but it numbs that sense of wonder too. And let's face it, many of us started drinking to manage difficult feelings, perhaps anxiety or loneliness or grief or stress or trauma, boredom, shame, restlessness, overwhelm. And alcohol at first can seem like a blessed relief. It's like a shortcut to comfort. It's like a sort of dimmer switch for that intense emotional pain. It just numbs it down a little to feel more manageable. And the nervous system doesn't work selectively. You see, you can't chemically numb out sadness without also dulling joy. You can sedate fear, but you lose the delight. You can disconnect from discomfort, but eventually you disconnect from awe, from wonder, from joy. And I think many people in recovery discover this slowly, because at first sometimes sobriety can feel a bit flat. It feels raw, exposed, colourless. And during this emotionally intense, raw, difficult time, a drink can seem like an even more appealing option than ever. You stop drinking expecting life to become instantly magical, but instead you're standing in the supermarket feeling irrationally emotional because there's just too much cereal choices and somebody's child screaming. During this sensitive time, your nervous system is recalibrating and your emotions are thawing out. And underneath all that numbness, something astonishing starts returning: sensitivity. But that sensitivity is not weakness. It's the ability to feel life again. You might have heard the expression, the good thing about getting sober is getting your feelings back. And yes, the bad thing about getting sober is getting your feelings back. But isn't it worth it to have the ability to notice things, to get back the ability to be moved? And I think awe is one of the clearest signs that healing is happening, because awe pulls us out of the prison of the self. And when we're stuck in addiction, it becomes very, very small. That little cell, the walls just start to close in. because life becomes repetitive. It becomes very self-focused. You're constantly ruminating and going back over questions like, can I have a drink tonight? Did I embarrass myself? How bad is my anxiety? Why can't I escape this feeling? Everything becomes very narrow. The world shrinks. But awe expands us. It lifts us out of that tiny little prison cell, and for a moment we stop obsessing over ourselves and reconnect with something larger. Nature, beauty, humanity, art, love, mystery, connection, even just in silence. And interestingly, research now backs this up. Experiences of awe reduce stress, decrease rumination, and increase feelings of connection and well-being. But honestly, you don't need research to know this. You know it already. You've probably felt it, even in the middle of difficult times, maybe especially in difficult times. I remember during periods of emotional chaos in my own life, there would suddenly be those tiny moments. Perhaps a blackbird singing on a fence, or sunlight and water, the crisp smell of sea air, or church bells in the distance. Maybe a poem that made me cry, and for one tiny second I would remember I'm still alive. There's something good underneath all this pain. And recovery is partly about learning to trust those moments again, because addiction trains us to override our natural responses. We stop listening to our bodies. We stop trusting our intuition. We stop noticing pleasure unless it's intense, and everything has to be louder, bigger, more dramatic, more stimulating. But awe is often quiet, subtle, gentle. Often I think recovery is less about becoming a brand new person and more about recovering our original settings. The self underneath all the coping mechanisms, that self that could once become fascinated by clouds, or moved by music, or delighted by rain puddles. I've spent a lot of my working life in the past working with children in education and social care settings, and it's a wonderful thing to see how children experience awe naturally. I saw this with my own son, how he'd stare at an insect or a snail as if he discovered alien life, or gasp at a really big full moon. And yes, they ask endless questions. But then comes along addiction, and it creates emotional deadening. The world loses its texture, the days just start to blur together, and eventually people often say the same thing. I just don't enjoy anything anymore. And this is because their nervous systems become flattened. But the beautiful thing is, this capacity for joy, for wonder, for awe returns slowly. Sometimes very slowly. And at first you might only notice tiny flickers, just those little glimmers, particularly around the little things. Maybe a cup of tea that tastes unusually good, or the lovely comfort of fresh sheets, or even the relief of waking up one morning and realising that you've woke up without that sense of dread. Hearing laughter and actually joining in, standing outside and feeling the wind, noticing colours again, smelling flowers. And I know all of this is so small, but unless you understand addiction, it might seem meaningless. Because understanding addiction, we realise that it disconnects us from direct experience. And the wonderful thing is, recovery reconnects us. And awe is direct experience. It's being in the midst of a presence, a sense. Because you can't feel awe while mentally time travelling into shame about the past or catastrophising about the future. Awe anchors you to the here and now, the sky, the breeze, the song, the moment. And I think that's one reason nature can be so healing in recovery. Nature doesn't demand anything from us. The sea doesn't care about your mistakes. The clouds don't require self-improvement. Birdsong doesn't ask whether you've wasted years of your life. Nature simply says, you're here, and this moment is alive. There's something deeply regulating and healing about that, especially for people whose nervous systems have been battered by stress, trauma, chaos, or addiction. And I think many of us drank partly because we lost touch with a sense of safety, with a sense of calm, belonging, and awe quietly restores those things, not in a big, dramatic, cinematic way, but just in the ordinary moments. But to enjoy those ordinary moments, we need to have some mental clarity. So putting down the drink helps you start to connect with that wonderful feeling that you get when you look up at the stars, or you watch the waves, or you see the sunlight just streaming down through the trees. And here's something important. Awe is available even when life is imperfect. Even though today I've been out and about and I have experienced awe. I've seen the sunshine, I felt the wind, I watched the waves out at sea. I've also had the experience of hearing the dustbins being collected, a gas bottle being delivered to one of my neighbours. Life's not perfect. It's just this whole mixture. And our life doesn't need to be perfect. You don't have to have everything solved. You don't need to be fully healed. You don't need to be in the cinematic, Instagram-worthy setting to feel awe. You don't need to become permanently positive. Actually, please don't become permanently positive. You can still be anxious and feel awe. You can still be grieving and feel awe. You can still struggle financially and feel awe. And you can still be in the middle of rebuilding your life and feel awe. Sometimes the people who notice beauty most deeply are the people who have suffered the most deeply, because they no longer take small goodnesses for granted. And recovery can sharpen that sense of gratitude in that way. This is not toxic positivity. It's not pretending everything is wonderful. It's deep down, real gratitude. The kind that is born from struggle. It's born from the contrast. When you put a few sober days together, you'll know what I mean. It's the gratitude of waking up without shame, of remembering all the conversations that you had the evening before, the gratitude of feeling a sense of peace, of becoming emotionally available again for other people. And I think this matters enormously because many people trying to stop drinking focus only on deprivation. They think, what am I giving up? But long-term recovery depends far more on discovering what am I getting back. And one of the greatest things we get back is our ability to feel alive, to feeling alive in a way that's not artificially stimulated. And there's the profound difference. Alcohol offers intensity, awe offers depths. And intensity burns out quickly. Depth nourishes. It reaches all those parts that alcohol could never reach. And the strange thing is that once you start paying attention to awe, you notice it everywhere. You start to see it in simple things like the way the sunlight moves across a room, or the scent of grass after rain, or the sound of gulls near the coast. Perhaps it's in old hymns, or poetry, or just laughter around the table. The first strawberries of summer, or a dog sleeping peacefully beside you. And these moments might seem tiny, but they're not tiny. They're evidence that your nervous system is healing. They're evidence that your spirit is returning, that you're becoming emotionally accessible again. And perhaps recovery is partly about relearning enchantment. Now, bear with me here. Enchantment's not about childish fantasy. You can have your feet very much firmly on the ground, but it's that ability to remain open-hearted in a world that often encourages numbness, because modern life itself can be numbing. You've heard people talking about the scrolling and the noise and the stress and the overconsumption and the constant stimulation. All of those things numb us out anyway, and alcohol simply intensifies a disconnection many people already feel. But awe breaks through that disconnection. It interrupts the trance. It reminds us that we're human beings, we're not machines. Creatures are meant to experience wonder. And maybe that's why spiritual traditions throughout history, it doesn't matter what spiritual tradition it is, but they've emphasised contemplation, themes of silence, nature, prayer, music, beauty. They've highlighted all of those things because these things reconnect us with meaning. And addiction is often underneath everything else. It's the crisis of disconnection from ourselves, from others, from our body, from joy, from meaning, from any sense of a spiritual connection. And awe repairs that connection. It's quiet. It's gentle. It's just one moment at a time. So maybe part of recovery is not constantly asking, how do I stop drinking? But also asking, how do I become more available to wonder? How do I slow down enough to notice beauty? How do I create space for presence? How do I nourish the part of me that still responds to birdsong, poetry, moonlight, kindness, music, prayer, or sea air, or whatever floats your boat? Because that part of you really matters. That part of you is alive. And alcohol can bury it, but it can't destroy it. It waits patiently underneath the noise. And recovery is often the process of uncovering it again. So today, wherever you are, perhaps just take 60 seconds to look up at the sky, to open a window, to listen that bit more carefully, to notice light, wind, colour, and especially notice something ancient alive that is continuing around you. And remember, this capacity for awe is not trivial. It's not a bolt-on to do a retreat or a nice weekend away. It might actually be one of the deepest signs of healing we have, so we need to practice it on a daily basis. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for still being here with me. And until next time, take care. Take care of yourself gently. Bye. Bye for now.